Nobody here tonight is worried that while we're listening to this debate, a horse may have popped into being out of nothing in your dorm room and is there defiling the carpet right now. So it seems to me that we have every reason to think that first premise is true. If things really could come into being out of nothing uncaused, then it becomes inexplicable why just anything and everything doesn't come into being out of nothing. Why doesn't root beer and Beethoven and hot dogs come into being out of nothing? You can't say that only things of a certain nature come into being from nothing, because nothingness has no nature to constrain it. Nothingness has no properties. So it seems to me if any premise is obvious in this whole debate tonight, it would be this one, that whatever begins to exist has a cause.
I disagree.
Really?
It's surprising as it may sound. And it is possible to say that only a special kind of thing can arise out of nothing. Physicists have looked at vacuums, that is to say, they have tried to produce conditions under which there is absolutely not one single detectable particle, and they have found that, as a matter of fact, particles pop into existence. Now, a horse is not going to pop into existence in a vacuum, because everything that now exists is the result of 5 or 10 billion years of change, evolution, and growing complexity. Consequently, when we're talking about the beginning of the universe, we might be talking precisely about those slight oscillations in the vacuum that produce out of nothing, and in a completely random way, they actually produce a particle. Once you've got a particle, or two, right, then you're on your way.
Okay. Based on the assertion that you don't need an immaterial, self-existing, and personal being to explain things, how do you account for the universe? Either it is an illusion, either it is self-created, either it is self-existing, or the being, which he argues is God, created it. Which one do you believe in?
I find the presupposition of your question a strange one. I'm not a genius, and I'm not all-knowing. There's lots of things I don't understand. I don't even understand how a radio works. I don't understand how fMRI works. I'm completely baffled, indeed, by gravity and by nearly everything in the world around me. I acknowledge my ignorance. 1,000 years ago, I would have said about lightning, about this, about that. I would have said, yes, it's the god of lightning. Zeus did this, and that flood, that's due to Poseidon, and I got an explanation for everything. But the point is, we don't have an explanation for these things. And to say that God is an explanation is just a jump into something that then has no way whatsoever of being connected with what people actually believe in. Real people believe in when they say they believe in God. You have to then go to the testimony of people who saw the resurrection of Christ. But, for Christ's sake, there is an enormous amount of testimony for the resurrection of at least 24 other beings in other religions, in the Middle East, in China, all over the place. When I try to explain to my Chinese wife these bizarre doctrines of the Christian faith about the Immaculate Conception, which presupposes original sin, about the virgin birth, she said, oh yeah, we have lots of virgin birth in Chinese mythology. Mythology is full of the same sorts of stories. You happen to be at the right place at the right time to pick up this one story, but the same story has been sort of told all over the place before Christ and independently of Christ, because it's just a projection of the human mind.
I just want to know which of the four.
I said no, because I don't know. Aren't I allowed not to know? I'm saying you should know, or think you know.
With respect to the resurrection, the New Testament documents are not mythological documents. These are not of the literary genre of myth. These are of the genre of ancient biography. They are like the lives of the Caesars and other ancient personages. We have 4 of these biographies of Jesus, and historians have agreed on those 3 facts that I mentioned. With respect to the question, however, I think the questioner raises a very good issue. This is one that has puzzled me for years. It seems to me we basically have 3 alternatives. Either the universe has existed from an infinite past, or the universe has existed only finitely long, but popped into being uncaused out of nothing. Or the universe has existed for finitely long, and there is a transcendent cause of the universe. Now, of those 3, it seems to me that the third is the most reasonable. The idea that it's finite in the past and popped into being from nothing, I think, is clearly absurd. I think the problem of the infinite past involves the problems that I suggested, and therefore I think the best explanation is that there's a transcendent cause.
Thank you very much, both of you, for a wonderful debate.
My pleasure.
My question is obviously directed at Professor Craig. I personally hail from an Islamic background, and according to my religion, or at least my particular sect of religion, you're a heretic. And so if you're an infidel, you're going to burn in hell because you don't believe in the same thing that I do.
I'm aware.
Right. The point of my question is that within the trio of these, Judeo-Christian religions, according to this religion, this guy's going to hell. According to that religion, this guy's going to hell. Given all the diversity and all the death and destruction that's been caused as a result of worshiping God and all the different sects of each different religion, wouldn't it have been much more? Isn't it more plausible to say that in fact God is a man-made creation specific to the culture of a particular group of people? May they be Arabs in the desert, or may they be Christian, or may they be Jews in ancient Rome, or enslaved people in Egypt.
I don't see how that follows at all. I mean, I would like to see a good argument for that. I think the only thing that follows from religious diversity is that they can't all be right. They could all be wrong, but they can't all be right. But atheism doesn't win by default. You see, atheism is one of the world religions too. It's also a religious worldview which says there is no God, and it could be wrong. It could be that Christianity is true, and that atheism and Buddhism and Hinduism are wrong, or it could be that Hinduism is true, and atheism and Christianity and Judaism is wrong. You see, atheism is in the mix too of religious diversity. An atheist doesn't get to stand back and play this game of saying, oh, you all disagree. He disagrees as well. He thinks 90% of the world's population or more are all mistaken. Now, with regard to Islam, Islam was my side area of specialization during my theological studies in Germany, and I never dreamt that it would be something that would be relevant someday to public speaking of this nature. But with the rise in Western consciousness now of Islam, I found myself called upon to address it more often. And I think my fundamental problem with Islam is that the Quran gets it wrong about the historical Jesus. I think it's an enormous embarrassment for the Islamic faith that it denies the central fact about Jesus of Nazareth that every historian, even the most radical skeptical biblical critics, admit, and that is that Jesus of Nazareth perished on a Roman cross under Pontius Pilate. He was crucified and died. And the Quran, as you know, says they did not kill him, neither did they crucify him. So I think that when you look at the Quran, it was written by a man 600 years after the life of Jesus with no first-hand knowledge of the facts. And that's why no historian turns to the Quran as a primary source of knowledge or information about the historical Jesus. And therefore, I don't think it is God's word. I think it is a product of later religious genius, but in fact, it's mistaken in several of its assertions.